Hello everyone, I am TWK and welcome to TWK Reviews, and today I'm taking a look at a video game that has, let's just say, a divisive opinion on it. People either really love it, or they really hate it, or they think it's just fine. As for me, I'm in the more positive camp when it comes to Yakuza 3, and I'm going to hopefully explain why in this review, so let's get on with that, shall we? The one thing you'll notice while playing Yakuza 3 is that, well, despite its intriguing opening moments, the game actually takes quite a while to get to the actual Yakuza plot of the story that players have come accustomed to. Instead, we have a series of more light-hearted affairs featuring our protagonist, Kazuma Kiryu, as he takes over an orphanage and becomes the surrogate father to 8 children alongside his already established surrogate daughter, Haruka. And if you're not a fan of the slice-of-life dramatics, then the next several hours of Yakuza 3 are probably not going to win you over. That's not to say anything overly negative about them, as I do feel that the writing of these scenarios are generally pretty good. These include Izumi feeling guilty over not having real parents and thus not even wanting to eat dinner until Kiryu talks with her, and this whole thing ends with the rest of the kids waiting for Kiryu and Izumi to return, not even eating their dinners. This is wholesome as heck, and I love it! Another one has Shiro getting bullied at school, but he can't do anything about it because the kid's dad is their teacher. Kiryu solves this problem by befriending someone whom the teacher is a bootlicker to, the local councilman. And we bond in the manliest way possible with golf! The reaction the teacher gives when he finally puts all the pieces together is quite priceless to boot. It should be noted that there are technically Yakuza-style shenanigans afoot on this island prefecture. First, we have the local Yakuza who are, as usual in this series, portrayed as goofy but lovable dorks. Then we have what's going on with the government because Kiryu somehow always finds himself in the middle of a government conspiracy. This time they want to build a military base and a luxury resort on Okinawa. This is pretty much background info until much later on, but it's good to keep a tab on for later. And of course we have what ends up bringing this sweet wholesome dude out of retirement. Yakuza patriarchs getting shot, and not shot just by anyone, but a one that resembles Kazuma, Kiryu's dead father. And that's basically what you can expect plot-wise from Yakuza 3. It's got a mixture of camp, drama, conspiracy, and wholesomeness. Oh, and with damn near every Yakuza title, at least one important character has to bite the bullet.
Kashiwagi-san.
I'm honestly surprised Date never gets caught in the crossfire considering everything he's gone through. He must have a horseshoe permanently attached to himself or something. Getting back on point, the amount of time Yakuza 3 forces you to look over all 9 kids throughout your playthrough was definitely not something most fans wanted to see from the Dragon of Dojima. While I can understand this, I can't help but feel feels whenever something wholesome happens. I don't know, maybe this is what being over the age of 30 feels like. All that edginess just being replaced with hugs and rainbows. Regardless, if there is one thing that I do believe that everyone can agree on, it's that the sub-stories are still as rad as ever. One thing I forgot is that this game was actually include fully voice-acted cutscenes. My favorite of which comes after Kiryu fills in during an action scene and everyone, sans director, sees Kiryu's back tattoo and starts freaking out.
どこのプロダクションにも入ってないなら、うちの映画会社の専属になったよ。みんなもそれがいいと思うだろ？
よくないです。
なんなんだよ全員揃って。
すまんな。俺も映画には興味がない。これで失礼させてもらう。
はい、お勤めご苦労様。はい、いや、ご出演お疲れ様でした。お疲れ様でした。
なんなんだ一体。
I'd recommend doing these sub-stories not just because they're some of the best parts of the game, but they also provide some much-needed experience. Sure, you can get a good amount of XP from battling through the main story alone, but you'll only get so far without completing these optional objectives. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if at least 40% of my experience points were gained purely through these side quests. Oh, and let's talk about the upgrade system here for a quick second. All you have to do is gain XP and level up. Every time you do, you gain a point and exchange these points for upgrades, and as you gain more upgrades, it takes more points to gain them. Very simple, very to the point, especially the layout. It's basically the anti-Yakuza 0 in that manner, and don't worry, we'll get to that beautiful game one day. The one big downside for this game, when compared to more modern entries, is how much the battling has aged over the years. It's not too bad if you haven't played a Yakuza game in a few months, but if you're playing this after something like 6, Kiwami 2, or Lost Judgment, then let me tell you, you're going to feel Yakuza 3's age. That isn't to say the combat is objectively dreadful, but after every improvement made to it, coming back can be difficult if there hasn't been enough time between playthroughs of different entries. My absolute most favorite part of this game, however, is how unique they make the two towns you'll be busting your way through look and feel. First we have Kamurocho, Tokyo. It's a sleazy, crime-ridden concrete jungle that Kiryu has called home for decades. In contrast, we have Ryukyu, Okinawa, a tropical town that is much more laid back. In all honesty, this place reminds me of the time I spent in Hawaii over 20 years ago, and wow. Another thing to make me feel both nostalgic and old. Nevertheless, these towns will burn their way into your permanent memory due to how distinct they are. I just hope we can eventually return to downtown Ryukyu at some point in a later entry. It's too cool of a location to only do once. At the very least, I'm glad we have it here. I'm also glad that the devs always opted to have the player maneuver around these cities on foot instead of a vehicle. That has to be one of the more unique things about this whole franchise, really. Outside of Fist of the North Star, getting from place to place is all about getting the legwork in. Sure, there are a few taxi locations, but not as much as in later games, and you'd hardly ever need to use them as these maps are puny sized compared to other open world games. I love this as it forces you to learn your surroundings, take notice of landmarks, and soon you'll become just as familiar with these areas as Kiryu himself. Like, if you play more than 2 Yakuza games, then you should know where Tenkaichi Street, Pink Street, and the Theater District are without even thinking about it. Some call it recycling assets, but I call it the ever-evolving home away from home that I can never get enough of and hope it never goes away. Seriously, RGG, if you're watching, please never remove Kamurocho from the series. Anyways, I'm rambling at this point, so I'll just make my final one so we can get the heck out of here. My final point quite simply is this. Yakuza 3 is a flawed entry to be sure, especially if you're not a fan of the orphanage plotline, but for me, and involving a few others as well, Yakuza 3 brings the feels, and sometimes we need a game like this. I know I certainly do.
Eh? お兄ちゃん？
私と秋元くんは生き別れの兄弟だったのよ。
なんだって？
秋元くんのことは大好きだけど、でもやっぱり兄弟で結婚はできないわ。
そんな。水木ちゃんが僕の妹だったなんて。じゃあ僕たちは一生籍を入れられないのか。 待てよ。もともと僕たちは家族だったということは、もう席に入ってるってことだ。ヤッホー、やったぞー。